Welcome back. Education in America. In a 2016 ranking of the top 10 school systems in the world, the United States does not even break the top 10. The U.S. is beat out by countries like Finland, Belgium, Estonia, Barbados, Qatar, Ireland, Japan. Why is that? Joining us right now in a Fox Business exclusive is the United States Education Secretary, Betsy Devos. Ms. Secretary, good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Maria. Great to join you.
And the comment that I made earlier, Secretary Devos, is that in all of the campaigning that we've seen, whether it's for the midterms or the general election, I hear nothing about education. But when you look at these statistics, the fact that the United States is so low compared to so many other countries, the U.S. is behind in average performance in math and science, tied with China in reading. Give us your sense of why that is.
Well, Maria, we've been doing essentially the same thing for over 100 years in education, investing more and more money, trying to improve things and expecting a different result. And the reality is things haven't fundamentally changed for too many children. We're leaving too many of them behind, leaving them unprepared for a fulfilling adult life.
So it's not how much money you spend, it's the system and what you do with the money. And look at Switzerland.
Really need to fundamentally rethink everything about education, how we do it, and focus on individual students' needs.
See, that's what they do in Switzerland, among other things. And what does that mean? That means they tie the money to the student rather than to the teachers' union.
How they learn and how we're going to get them to fulfill their greatest potential.
So on a practical level, tell us how you do that. What are the most important things or levers to pull in terms of getting the United States up the rankings when it comes to education? And now I'm talking about grammar school, younger students. We can do higher education in a moment, but let's talk younger students. What needs to be done, practically speaking?
Sure. One of the most fundamental things, again, is focusing on individual children and knowing that all students are different. They learn.
That's the other thing, one size fits all. In Germany, in Switzerland, they have these different different schools you can go through. People that want to go the academic route, people that don't. People, they don't put the mentally disabled in the same programs that people are going to go into PhDs. It doesn't make sense, and everything in between.
Differently. I have 4 children. They were all very different learners.
And it's not about how intelligent you are according to some quantitative number. It's about different things you want to do.
We have to allow for more kinds of schools, more kinds of educational experiences, and to do that, we need to empower more families to make those decisions on behalf of their students. Some states are beginning to do this in meaningful ways, but we need to see it on a much broader scale across the country.
Betsy, just tell them, let's implement something like they have in Switzerland and Germany.
In terms of practical speaking, are you saying better, more informed or criteria to study?
No.
The curriculum needs to change?
No.
More days in school?
No.
Because I know that students in China are having longer days in school.
The days are probably too long already.
And longer calendar years in school.
No, it's not more money, more time.
So practically speaking, what are you saying needs to be done?
Practically speaking, we need many more kinds of educational experiences for students to pursue, to get the best out of each and every student.
Just explain what they do in Switzerland and Germany, please, Betsy.
For some students, it might mean longer school days or more days in school.
Okay, that's not what it's really about, Betsy.
Others, it might mean a different kind of environment where they are hands-on learning and doing project-based learning. But we have to...
I think you should relate it to these other countries because that makes it sound like something that already exists and works and has been being done for a very long time. Talk about the gymnasium and the different routes that they put people through rather than putting everyone in the same type of school.
Make sure that all of them have the opportunity to develop the skills that are going to take them forward into adulthood, like critical thinking, communication skills, fostering creativity, and the ability to work together with others. Much of that has been lost as we've been focused so much on assessments of math and reading, and even in doing so, we've seen those scores just sort of taper off and continue to be the middle of the pack as compared to the rest of the world. We're trying to do a top-down approach that is imposed on almost everyone, and it doesn't work for way too many students.
So, which leads to the next obvious.
Still doesn't sound very concrete. I mean, I don't remember all the different things they do in Germany and Switzerland. I didn't grow up there, but I've investigated it. I don't remember all the things off the top of my head, but if I was going to prepare for this interview, I would have studied up on those things and made sure I could explain them.
Question, and that is, why aren't we doing it? What's stopping?
Still, that's not hating on you, Betsy. I'm just saying, this is how I would help improve your messaging.
The U.S. from moving forward and making
I can't believe I said hating on you. I'm just saying it's not malevolent. I'm trying to help.
the changes required.
Well, we have a lot of forces that are protecting what is and what is known. A lot of forces protecting the status quo. We need to combat those, break them, and
that's right, Betsy. Talk about the gangs. Talk about the teacher unions.
Again, empower and allow parents to make decisions on behalf of their
The school mafia is what they are.
Individual children, because they know their children best. They know what's going to be the right environment.
And they think of like unions with all these like, you know, countries with the social benefits and whatnot. But no, actually, the unions are much. I don't know if you'd call it stronger, but they're much more, in a sense, stronger in the United States than they are in these European countries. This reminds me, very briefly, I'll say, this reminds me of the cost per mile of rail and tunnel development. It's something like it's 5 times or 10 times as expensive in the United States as it is in these other countries. And a lot of it has to do with the laws. Some of it may be regulations, but also unions here.
For them, and we need to ensure, commensurate with that, we need to ensure that parents have information about an array of options, but empowering parents to make those decisions and trusting parents to make decisions on behalf of their students, that's where we start.
Why wouldn't we?
I think the Fox Business, this is on the Fox Business Network, I think the host is still like, yeah, I got a little bit of that, but I still didn't feel like I got a lot of concrete content.
We trust parents. I mean, is it the teachers union? What outside forces
Yes, it's the teachers union. But how?
Are stopping us from making the changes required?
The teachers union has a stranglehold on many of the politicians in this country, both at the federal level and at the state level, and they are very resistant to the kind of change.
So in other words, if she'd explain what they do in Switzerland and Germany, the teachers unions in the United States do not want that, because it gives it basically makes you have to treat the students like customers a little bit more rather than prisoners. You know, they like the power dynamic of being the guard. I mean, they really don't care about these children.
Changes that need to happen. They are very protective of what they know, and they're really protective of adult jobs, and not really focused on what's right for individual students.
Has anything?
Not surprising. I mean, I don't know if it's some countries they don't allow unions for the government because it's just like, actually, I think, don't they have some laws? I don't know if it's the United States where they say you can't go on strike. The government employees can't go on strike, and so there's sometimes exceptions for government employees, and government schools have government employees. The teachers at government schools are government employees, but also as far as unions and whatnot, or at least what the unions can do. You know, if you want to have a trade association or a guild or whatever, but these unions are a little bit different.
Changed on that front? I mean, I remember stories where there was sexual abuse and teachers were not fired. They were going into the rubber room and just waiting their time out because of their tenure. Has anything loosened in that regard in terms of getting a better foothold on the student and what the students need, whether it be from the parent or anyone else?
Well, in some states, we've made significant progress, but there is a lot more progress to be made. And at the federal level, I think there needs to be honest conversations in the policymaking rooms around what is right long-term for the health of our students, of our children, which is the future of our country.
Of course.
Okay, so I think that was a largely lost opportunity to explain a very different vision for education in our country. There was two different levels. She could have explained how it's done in other countries, and with the freedom of choice of the education and the different paths that are used and how they start setting you out in different tiers or different directions, different types of schools at different ages, and then it starts breaking off, like I said, gymnasium. But basically, the general idea is that you start pushing people towards a more academic education versus a more commercial applied education. And even further beyond that, I think the academic degrees are very bad anyway. But even in those foreign countries, I think to some extent the academic degrees make a little bit more sense, because I think they don't do them as liberal arts degrees. In the United States, they do them as general education, and you declare a major and you take all kinds of stuff. You take acting, you take politics, political science, you take geology, all these things not related to your major unless you're majoring in those things, and English and this, blah, 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 blah. And then you waste all this time and money and you don't learn anything. Whereas if you say in Germany, you go to study mechanical engineering, you go to study mechanical engineering. You're there for a purpose. That's what you study. There's not like, well, you need these breadth requirements and you know, and then I think also when they're paying for it and they can only admit so many students, they're a little bit more like, hey, do we really need, there's an incentive to say, hey, what's the demand for mechanical engineers? The companies are saying there's no openings. Should we be funding people spending all these years doing this right now? Maybe we should be mindful of that. And I'm not in favor of governments paying for these university educations really, but in certain contexts I do sympathize with it, because in some ways we almost have the worst of both systems in the United States. It's kind of insane.